Good morning. We are beginning our fourth week of the spiritual exercises of Ignatius. My name's Carolyn Weaver. I wrote a manual, a user-friendly manual for the exercises called Exercises for Everyone. Please feel free to contact me if you'd like a copy. It's free. I am going to go ahead and do a introduction to this week 4 separate from our meditation. And actually, we're doing for the first day in the exercises, we're doing imaginative contemplation. So I want to give devotion to that because I think this is the first time we've done a pure imaginative contemplation. So this is going to be a separate intro video to week 4. Um, I'll just read what I wrote. The structure of the exercises has the purpose of leading a person to a true spiritual freedom. We grow into this freedom by gradually bringing an order of values into our lives so that we find that at the moment of choice or decision, we are not swayed by any disordered loves. And that's from the Spiritual Exercises number 21, and it is from Fleming's book, Draw Me Into Your Friendship. And that is a wonderful book. It's the spiritual exercises in a modern language, but still it's really nice to have. That's for spiritual directors, and that's where I was the base of me writing my book. But I add things, and I add all sorts of quotes from all different Jesuits all over. So the title of today is True Freedom and Foundation. So we went over part 1 of the foundation last week, and I'll review that. We are created to share in God's love and life for eternity. The experience of this love is manifested in our response of praise, reverence, and service. That is, loving God with all our heart, all our mind, and all our will. And that's from a paraphrase by Veltri, another Jesuit. And then here's a paraphrase by Fleming again. All the things of the world are also created because of God's love, and they become a context of gifts presented to us so that we can know God more easily and make a return of love more readily. And we looked at creation. I encouraged you to get out and really look at creation. And actually, if you're doing this in the fall, look for the harvest moons. You could still look at creation even though we're moving on. So now we are praying through the foundation part 2. So this is an intro, but just prayerfully, as I read this, just prayerfully meditate on it. And again, this whole section is in a paraphrase by Veltri. And there I have I could give you a link to the whole principle and foundation that is on a website. Okay, so prayerfully consider. Whenever we are hindered by another part of creation from deepening this relationship, it becomes necessary to examine our connection with that part to ensure that we are not hindered in pursuing our call. Often we may need to choose to separate ourselves from such barriers. It is true that we can only grow in our relationship with God by cooperating with other members of the human family in caring for each other and for creation itself. Nevertheless, it is also true that we are not to become so dependent on any part of creation that we would be distracted or separated from our fundamental relationship with our God. This means that whenever we make choices concerning any aspect of work and life, we are to be interiorly free with respect to those concerns that make obstacles of creation. So it's being attached, being too attached to long life or short life, health or sickness. So we all want health. So being so consumed with your health, or so consumed, I want to live a long life. riches or poverty, comfort or discomfort, being accepted or rejected, status or non-status. Therefore, our highest priority is to be in this relationship with God, shining through all our choices and everything that flows from these choices. Spiritual exercises number 23. So, let's unpack this. I unpack this. One of the goals in the exercises is to become indifferent to disordered loves. Any habits, so disordered loves are any habits, relationships, or attitudes that keep us from pursuing and loving God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength. Matthew 22:37. Indifference means that we get to the point where it does not matter if we have something in our life or not. We may end up having it in the end, but we hold everything with an open hand to God's plan. When we become indifferent to those things we are attached to, we become interiorly free to make choices that will lead to praise, reverence, and service of Him. Be not afraid and let God lead you to freedom. It is a process and takes time. Keep talking to God through it all. So all those things, they might be good things, but we're so attached to wanting to not be, or being afraid of being in poverty, or wanting so bad to have good health and live a long life that our priority becomes taking care of our body, versus and there's nothing wrong with taking care of your body. Like God says, it's your temple and we should take care of our bodies. But if it becomes a disordered love, and we become attached to it. And I love here just how Veltri puts it about making choices. We are to be interiorly free with respect to those concerns that make obstacles of creation. And I love how he says being accepted or rejected. And that's for me a big thing, to wanting to be accepted by people, that there's nothing wrong with having that as a desire, but if it becomes a compulsive desire, if it becomes a disordered love, that's not what God wants us to be free from fear. See, a lot of times we have fear a lot of times we have those disordered loves because we're not trusting God, and we're depending on ourselves, or we're thinking the thing that we are attached to is going to give us the love that we need. There is another, I think I moved. Oh, there it is. It's open to the page because I was reading it to my husband last night. This is a book called, it's going to be backwards, but it's called Beloved, A Journey of Prayer by Dale Gish. And he's another Ignatian director in San Francisco. And he wrote this book. It's verses from the exercises, all of them that relate to being beloved. And it's a nice introduction to getting the flow of prayer of exercises. I think it's about a 30-day, 40-day, I can't remember how many days it is, but it's a real step-by-step, and it kind of gets you ready. A lot of the verses that you're going to be praying in the exercises are in this book. They overlap, but you just do a repetition. But he wrote a paragraph on Ignatian indifference, because I had a small group yesterday that I talked about being indifferent to people's approval of me. And they really want to, what do you mean by indifferent? It's like, it doesn't mean you don't care. And I think Dale brings that out in his definition. Gotta get some water. This always happens to me when I make these recordings at 4:30 in the morning. Okay, Ignatian indifference is not a state where I do not care what happens. Instead, it is a state of true love, where I have found the pearl of great price, and am glad to give up everything else to have the treasure. When I truly know the love of God, God's goodness, care, and presence with me. I have found that treasure. I find I have been given a kind of spiritual freedom where I trust deeply enough to say, though I may have many preferences, what I truly want is what you, Lord, want, knowing that you are good and you will supply me with everything I need. And should you lead me in the way of the cross, you will not abandon me. And that through it, I will become more and more united with you. May the Lord give this kind of generous spirit. So it's when I truly know the love of God, God's goodness, care, and presence with me. And that's why we started Ignatius was brilliant. We start with that rock solid knowledge of God's acceptance of you and love for you. I always say this, you're wrapped in the bubble wrap of God's love when you start looking at your disordered loves, things that you're putting your hope in, or what I just read in that definition. I like that definition. It's not in my manual because the book wasn't written when I wrote the manual. Maybe I'll add it. So that is true freedom and foundation. So we just wanted to give that is what this week is all about. So in each, I'll just say, if you want, I'll review a tiny bit toward the end of the week, the foundation again, but I wanted to give the total introduction that's in my manual. So if you want to go to the first day of this week, we have most of it's Lectio Divina, but the first day is imaginative contemplation with a narrative in the life of Jesus. So stay tuned.